We're going to talk about one of my favorite things to nerd out about, and that is how to read a nutrition label. And that is because there are so many things that are marketed to us as high protein, low fat, low calorie, whatever it may be, that we don't necessarily know how that is going to play a role into our well-balanced diet. And now that we are learning to track things, we understand that we want to make sure that we are incorporating all of the macronutrients in appropriate moderation. So that is where our nutrition facts label comes in. A couple of key things that I want to point out right out of the gate. One thing that we tend to focus in on is the calories, but the bigger thing that we want to focus on is how those calories are made up, and that's going to come from the macronutrients that are listed in the label. So we are going to want to look at the protein content, the carb content, and the fat content. Protein and carbs both have 4 calories per gram, which is calculated into the calorie total, and fats have 9 calories per gram, calculated into the calorie total. So when we're looking at this box, we have 6 grams of fat, 18 carbs, and 2 proteins. So 18 carbs, 2 proteins, that's 20 grams. We're going to multiply that by 4, and then 6 times 9, which is going to get us the rough estimate of 140 calories. I'm going to get a little sidetracked here for a second. Companies are allowed to be up to 20% off with the caloric count in comparison to the macros. Then things can get really wonky when we start accounting for fiber that they can take out of the calories as well. We're not going to get into the weeds on that, but that's sometimes why when you are doing the math, it doesn't add up 100%. So key thing to remember though is that your app is going to track your macros, and that is going to be the more important thing for you to focus on because that's going to give you the more accurate calorie count. So again, doing the math, we should come up with around these calories. Now, how do we know how many of these to eat for that calorie? Well, that is where the serving size comes into play. And we are going to talk through the nuance of serving sizes. So there's a weight of a serving size on every package that you are going to get, and there is also an estimation. So this one is talking like how many crackers you get. That's very common in snack foods like chips, crackers, etc., cookies. The other thing that you might run into is for things like rice, it's going to say half cup, whole cup, whatever. Now, that is a visual of what the weight is estimated to look like. So 30 grams is estimated to look like 12 of these crackers. But we all know that things like chips and crackers break, so how the heck do we know how many pieces to take? Well, that's why we use our food scale, which you will get a whole video on that. And we weigh out the serving size so that we know what it is that we are eating, and we actually know what that serving size looks like. Whether we are getting pieces or whole crackers, it's going to give us a much better visual than just picking out 12 whole crackers and not knowing what to do with the other half of the box that's broken. So that is one thing that I wanted to talk about with reading food labels today. We're not going to go into too much on ingredients. Number one thing that we want to focus on when we are choosing foods, and this is something that you will hear over and over again from me as you are working with me, we do want to choose primarily whole food sources, and that's going to come from the outer perimeter of the grocery store, our produce, our dairy, our meat section. In the inner aisles, we're looking at things like grains, so rice, beans. Well, beans are technically legumes. We won't go down there. Breads, pastas, etc. But there is room for some of the things down the snack aisle too, as long as we, again, are doing it in moderation and our plate is well balanced. And there'll be a video on that too. But that is how you read a nutrition label. That is how you take a look at where the macronutrients are coming from, so you know how you want it to play into your day. If you have spare carbs in your day and some spare fats, great option to throw a couple of these in to hit that sweet tooth. But if you're looking for something that's higher in protein, this only has 2 grams, so that's not going to fit the bill. So take a look at the back, look at the facts, decide how that's going to work into your day.